Jasmine Wright stared in disbelief at her company laptop. 3 million views overnight. The viral video showed her triplets, Zion, Isaiah, and Elijah, being forcibly moved to the back of the plane while white passengers watched silently. Now, the flight attendant responsible was applying for a position at her company. Before we dive into this shocking story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you believe in standing up against discrimination. Let's get into how a routine family vacation turned into a national conversation about race in America. Jasmine Wright had always been a force to be reckoned with. At 38, she embodied the American dream, rising from the housing projects of South Chicago to become the founder and CEO of Phoenix Digital Solutions, a cybersecurity firm valued at over $200 million. But no achievement made her prouder than her 14-year-old identical triplet sons, Zion, Isaiah, and Elijah. The boys were exceptional by any standard. Honor students at Westlake Academy, the three shared their mother's sharp intellect and determination. They maintained perfect GPAs while also starring on their school's basketball team. Despite being identical, with the same warm brown skin, athletic builds, and closely cropped hair, those who knew them recognized their distinct personalities. Zion, born first by 3 minutes, was the natural leader, outspoken and protective. Isaiah, the middle triplet, was the analytical thinker who processed everything with thoughtful precision. Elijah, the youngest by 5 minutes, was the gentle peacemaker with an artistic soul. Their 6-bedroom home in the affluent Buckhead neighborhood of Atlanta stood as a testament to Jasmine's success. As a single mother, she had worked tirelessly to provide her boys with opportunities she never had. Their sprawling backyard featured a basketball court where the triplets practiced daily, perfecting their skills while Jasmine watched proudly from the kitchen window when she wasn't buried in work. "Mom, did you confirm our seats for San Francisco?" Zion called out one Thursday evening as Jasmine prepared dinner. The family was planning their first vacation in 2 years, a week-long trip to the Bay Area, combining Jasmine's business meetings with tourist activities for the boys. "First class, all 4 of us sitting together," Jasmine replied, stirring the jambalaya that had been her grandmother's recipe. "I just got the confirmation email today." Despite their privileged lifestyle, Jasmine never allowed her sons to forget the reality of being black in America. The triplets had faced their share of microaggressions, security guards following them in stores, neighbors questioning if they belonged in their upscale community, teachers expressing surprise at their academic excellence. Jasmine had taught them to handle these situations with dignity while never compromising their self-respect. "Remember what I always tell you," she would say during their family discussions. "Twice as good to get half as far," the boys would recite in unison, a mantra passed down through generations of Black Americans. Jasmine's own journey had been filled with obstacles. After graduating top of her class from Howard University, she'd faced discrimination at every tech company she worked for, passed over for promotions, her ideas credited to white male colleagues, her qualifications constantly questioned. When a particularly blatant incident left her jobless 6 years ago, she'd taken her severance package and founded Phoenix Digital. Now her company employed over 200 people, with offices in Atlanta, Chicago, and soon San Francisco. "Amara called to confirm your meeting with the Bay Area investors," Isaiah said, scrolling through his phone as he set the table. Amara Thompson was Jasmine's best friend since college and now served as COO of Phoenix Digital. The 2 women had weathered countless storms together, with Amara acting as an honorary aunt to the triplets. "I still think we should visit Alcatraz," Elijah added, placing water glasses around the table. "The history and architecture are fascinating." "And Golden Gate Park," Zion chimed in. "They have those cool bike rentals." Jasmine smiled at her son's enthusiasm. This vacation was long overdue. Between building her company and raising 3 teenage boys, she rarely took time for herself. But lately, she'd noticed the triplets encountering more frequent incidents of prejudice as they grew taller and more independent. Part of her wanted to shield them forever, another part knew they needed to learn to navigate these waters themselves. "I think we can fit in everything you want to see," she promised, bringing the steaming pot to the table. "Now eat up. We've got packing to finish tonight." As the family gathered around the dinner table, Jasmine felt a wave of gratitude. She'd worked hard to create this life for her children, to give them opportunities she never had. Yet a familiar knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach, the same feeling she got whenever her sons ventured into the world without her protection. No amount of money or success could shield them from the prejudice that still permeated American society. All she could do was prepare them as best she could and hope it would be enough. Little did she know, their upcoming trip would test everything she had taught them, in ways none of them could have anticipated. The Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport buzzed with Friday morning travelers when the Wright family arrived for their 10:30 a.m. flight to San Francisco. Dressed in comfortable athleisure wear, the boys in matching black joggers and different colored hoodies, they wheeled their luggage toward the check-in counter of Continental Airways. "Boarding passes for Wright, party of 4, Jasmine said to the airline representative, sliding her ID across the counter. Her sleek business blazer over designer jeans marked her as someone accustomed to premium service, while her natural hair styled in a sophisticated updo added to her commanding presence. The representative tapped at her keyboard. "Yes, Ms. Wright. For first-class tickets to San Francisco. Will you be checking any bags today?" Jasmine nodded toward their luggage. "For bags, please." After receiving their boarding passes and checking their suitcases, the family proceeded to the security checkpoint. The line moved steadily until they reached the front, where a TSA agent glanced at their boarding passes and IDs. "These 3 will need additional screening," the agent said flatly, gesturing to the triplets without making eye contact with Jasmine. "Why?" Jasmine asked, noting that several white teenagers who had just passed through received no such instruction. "Random selection, ma'am," the agent replied with practiced indifference. Jasmine observed as her sons were directed to a separate area. They complied without complaint, having experienced this random selection before. Meanwhile, she watched as passenger after passenger, most of them white, sailed through the regular line unimpeded. 15 minutes later, after being patted down and having their backpacks thoroughly searched, the triplets rejoined their mother. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "We're fine, Mom," Zion assured her, though his jaw was tight. "Just the usual," Isaiah added with practiced nonchalance. Elijah remained silent, offering only a small smile. By the time they reached Gate B23, boarding had not yet begun. They found seats in the waiting area, the boys pulling out their phones while Jasmine reviewed notes for her upcoming investor meeting. "Flight 1422 to San Francisco will begin boarding in approximately 15 minutes, announced a gate agent. "We'll start with our first-class passengers and those needing special assistance." As they waited, Jasmine noticed a flight attendant at the counter repeatedly glancing in their direction. The woman, whose name tag read Heather Miller, had straight blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and appeared to be in her early 40s. Each time she looked their way, her expression seemed to harden slightly. When first-class boarding was finally announced, the Wright family gathered their belongings and approached the gate. Jasmine handed their boarding passes to the agent, who scanned them efficiently. "Enjoy your flight," the agent said. As they entered the jet bridge, Heather Miller stood at the aircraft door, greeting passengers with a practiced smile. However, when the Wrights approached, her smile noticeably faltered. "Boarding passes, please," she requested, despite having just watched the gate agent scan them. Jasmine provided them again without comment. Heather scrutinized the passes closely. "You're all in first class." Her tone suggested disbelief. "Yes," Jasmine replied evenly. "Seats 2A through 2D." After a prolonged examination, Heather reluctantly handed back their boarding passes. "Very well." The family made their way to their seats in the second row of first class. The spacious cabin had only 8 rows, with large, comfortable seats arranged in pairs on either side of the aisle. They stored their carry-ons in the overhead compartments and settled in, with Jasmine and Elijah on one side, Zion and Isaiah on the other. Heather continued greeting subsequent passengers, her demeanor noticeably warmer toward the white travelers entering first class. She chatted amiably with an older white couple, offering to help stow their bags and asking about their destination plans. As more passengers boarded, Heather returned to the Wright family. "I need to verify your boarding passes again," she stated, extending her hand expectantly. Jasmine raised an eyebrow but complied. "Is there a problem?" "Just routine verification," Heather responded tersely. After examining the passes once more, she returned them without comment and moved on. Yet barely 5 minutes later, she approached again. "Excuse me, but are you sure these are your assigned seats?" she questioned. "Yes," Jasmine replied firmly. "We specifically booked these seats together. Is there some issue with the reservation system?" No, Heather backpedaled. "Just making sure everyone's in the right place." By now, the triplets were exchanging glances, well aware of what was happening. They had seen this behavior before, the repeated questioning, the implied suggestion that they didn't belong. Jasmine placed a calming hand on Elijah's arm, silently communicating that she was handling the situation. Just as the final passengers were boarding, Jasmine's phone rang. She checked the screen, it was Amara. "I need to take this," she told her sons. "It's about the investor meeting. I'll step out to the jet bridge for better reception. Be right back." The boys nodded as Jasmine rose from her seat and moved toward the front of the plane, answering the call as she stepped into the jet bridge. "Amara, what's up?" she asked, unaware that behind her, Heather Miller was watching with calculating eyes, seeing an opportunity in the mother's temporary absence. The moment Jasmine disappeared from view, Heather made her move toward the 3 identical teenage boys now sitting unaccompanied in the premium cabin. As Jasmine's voice faded down the jet bridge, Heather Miller approached the triplets with newfound authority in her stride. She leaned over, lowering her voice to a stern whisper. "There seems to be an issue with your seating assignment," she stated, her blue eyes cold despite her customer service smile. "I'll need you boys to relocate to the main cabin." Zion straightened in his seat. "What issue?" "Our mom just stepped out to take a call. She paid for these first-class tickets." Heather's smile tightened. "That may be what you were told, but our system is showing these seats are reserved for other passengers. We need to sort this out, and in the meantime, you'll have to move to the back." Isaiah, always the methodical one, pulled out his phone. "I have the confirmation email right here with our seat assignments. 2A through 2D. We're in the correct seats." He turned the screen toward Heather, who barely glanced at it before shaking her head. "Digital confirmations can have errors. The computer system is the final authority, and it's showing these seats are not assigned to you." Her voice carried just enough volume that nearby passengers could hear the exchange but not enough to cause a scene. "Our mom will be back any minute," Elijah said quietly. "Can we wait until she returns to sort this out?" "I'm afraid not. We're preparing for departure, and everyone needs to be in their proper seats." Heather gestured toward the back of the plane. "There are available seats in rows 28 and 32. Isaiah, sensing something wasn't right, discreetly activated his phone's camera and placed it partially hidden between his leg and the armrest, angling it to capture the interaction. "This doesn't make sense," Zion persisted. "We checked in together. The gate agent scanned our boarding passes. There was no issue then." Heather's facade of professionalism began to crack. "Listen, either you can move voluntarily, or I can have the captain remove you from the flight for non-compliance with crew member instructions. Your choice." The threat hung in the air as the boys exchanged glances. They knew the rules, disobeying flight crew could indeed get passengers removed from planes. They'd seen news stories about it happening disproportionately to people who looked like them. An elderly white woman seated across the aisle leaned forward. "Excuse me, but these young men were here before I boarded. They clearly have assigned seats." Heather's eyes flashed with irritation before she composed herself. "Ma'am, I assure you I'm handling an administrative issue. These seats were double booked, and I'm resolving the situation. She turned back to the triplets. Last chance to comply voluntarily. The boys, recognizing the impossible position they were in without their mother present, reluctantly gathered their belongings. As they stood, a white couple in their 30s who had been waiting in the aisle approached. "Are these our seats?" The man asked Heather, holding out his boarding pass. Without even checking it, Heather nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, 2B and 2C. Sorry for the confusion. We had some passengers in the wrong seats." The couple settled into the seats Zion and Isaiah had just vacated, casting uncomfortable glances at the departing teenagers but saying nothing. "What about our seats on the other side?" Elijah asked, pointing to where he and his mother had been sitting. "Those were also double-booked," Heather replied without missing a beat. She gestured to another white passenger hovering nearby. "This gentleman has the correct assignment for 2A. As the boys were ushered toward the back, Heather deliberately separated them, pointing each to different rows. 28F for you, 32A for you, and 35D for you, she instructed, ensuring they would be spread throughout the economy section. "We'd prefer to sit together," Isaiah attempted to negotiate. "Not possible. The flight is full," Heather responded curtly, despite several visible empty seats together in the middle of the plane. Reluctantly, the triplets made their way to their assigned seats, navigating the narrow aisle of the main cabin while passengers already seated watched curiously. Isaiah kept his phone recording, capturing their forced relocation. Meanwhile, in the jet bridge, Jasmine concluded her call with Amara. What was supposed to be a quick update about the San Francisco meeting had turned into a longer discussion about a potential security vulnerability in their newest software. Now resolved, she headed back to her seat, unaware of what had transpired in her brief absence. As she stepped back onto the plane, Jasmine immediately noticed the white couple sitting where Zion and Isaiah should have been. Another white passenger occupied her own seat, with Elijah nowhere in sight. "Excuse me," she said, confusion evident in her voice. "There must be some mistake. These are our seats." The couple looked up, uncomfortable but not moving. "The flight attendant just seated us here. She said there was a booking issue." Jasmine's confusion quickly turned to concern. "Where are my sons?" The man shrugged apologetically. The flight attendant took them to the back. Blood pounding in her ears, Jasmine scanned the cabin for Heather, spotting her helping a passenger stow luggage several rows back. Their eyes met briefly, and Heather quickly looked away, pretending not to notice Jasmine's presence. In that moment, Jasmine Wright understood exactly what had happened in the few minutes she'd been away from her children. And as the realization dawned, the successful CEO, the polished professional, the woman who had carefully navigated white corporate America for years, felt something snap inside her. This would not stand. Not today. Not with her children. "Excuse me." Jasmine's voice cut through the ambient noise of the cabin, commanding attention without shouting. She stood at the entrance to first class, her 5'9" frame blocking the aisle as she stared directly at Heather Miller. "I need to know where my sons are immediately." Heather's customer service smile flickered on like a faulty light bulb. "Ms. Wright, there was a slight computer error with your reservation. We had to reassign." "Stop," Jasmine interrupted, her tone leaving no room for excuses. "I booked and paid for 4 first-class seats weeks ago. We checked in together. Our boarding passes were scanned at the gate. There was no computer error during the 5 minutes I stepped out to take a phone call." Passengers throughout first class were now watching the confrontation unfold. The white couple occupying Zion and Isaiah's seats shifted uncomfortably. "If you'll allow me to explain," Heather began again, moving closer to speak more privately. "Sometimes our system shows seat assignments that aren't actually available." "Where are my children?" Jasmine demanded, unmoved by the attempt to divert her attention. A middle-aged white man in a pilot's uniform appeared from the cockpit. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his name tag identifying him as Captain Reynolds. Jasmine turned to him. "Captain, I stepped out briefly to take an important call. When I returned, my 3 teenage sons had been removed from our first-class seats, which we booked and paid for, and other passengers had been placed in them." Captain Reynolds looked to Heather. "Ms. Miller, what's going on?" Heather's composure slipped slightly. There was a seating conflict in the system. These passengers, she gestured to the couple and the man now occupying the Wright family's seats, had their boarding passes showing the same seat assignments. The captain held out his hand. "May I see all relevant boarding passes, please?" Jasmine quickly produced hers and explained, "My son's passes are with them, wherever they've been relocated." The white couple reluctantly handed over their boarding passes as well. Captain Reynolds examined them carefully. "These passes show seats 4A and 4B, not 2B and 2C where you're currently seated," he noted, looking at the couple. He then checked the pass of the man in Jasmine's seat. "And yours shows 5D, sir, not 2A." The passengers looked confused. "But the flight attendant specifically directed us to these seats," the woman explained. Captain Reynolds turned to Heather, whose face had paled considerably. "Ms. Miller, please locate this passenger's sons and bring them back to their assigned seats immediately." As Heather moved toward the back of the plane, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text message from Isaiah. "Mom, I recorded everything. We're in rows 28, 32, and 35. My son has video of the entire incident," Jasmine informed the captain, showing him the text. The captain's expression darkened. "I apologize for this situation, Ms. Wright. Please rest assured it will be addressed appropriately. Let's get your family back together first." One by one, the triplets made their way back to first class, each showing visible relief at seeing their mother. The white passengers who had taken their seats were now relocated to their actual assignments, avoiding eye contact as they moved. Once the family was reseated, Jasmine asked Isaiah to show her the recording. The video clearly captured Heather's deliberate deception, the false claims about system errors, the threats of removal from the flight, and most damning, the immediate seating of white passengers without verifying their boarding passes. When Heather returned to the first-class cabin to continue her duties, the tension was palpable. She avoided looking directly at the Wright family. "Ms. Miller," Jasmine called, her voice steady and professional. "I'd like your employee identification number, please." Heather's face flushed. "That's not something we typically provide to passengers. I'll be filing a formal complaint before we land, and I want to ensure it's properly directed," Jasmine explained. "Your name tag only shows your first name." "Heather Miller," she replied tersely. "I was just doing my job." "No," Jasmine countered. "Your job was not to remove my children from their assigned seats while I took a phone call. Your job was not to place them in separate rows at the back of the plane. And your job certainly wasn't to give our seats to other passengers without verifying their boarding passes." "I don't appreciate your tone," Heather responded, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "There's no need to make this about anything other than a simple misunderstanding." "What exactly am I making this about, Ms. Miller?" Jasmine asked, her eyes never leaving the flight attendant's face. The implied question hung in the air. Several nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably. "You know exactly what you're implying," Heather whispered harshly, leaning closer. "Some people just aren't used to seeing certain people in first class. Forgive me for being surprised when 3 teenage boys were up here without supervision." Isaiah's phone was still recording. Captain Reynolds, who had been speaking with another crew member, returned to address Jasmine. "Ms. Wright, I want to personally apologize for this incident. Continental Airways does not condone discrimination of any kind. I'll be submitting my own report, and the airline's customer relations team will be in touch. For the remainder of the flight, another attendant will be serving the first-class cabin." Heather's face reddened further as she was effectively removed from her duties. As she retreated to the galley, Jasmine turned to her sons. "Are you all okay?" she asked quietly. Zion's jaw was clenched tight. "Fine. Isaiah nodded, still holding his phone. Got everything on video. Elijah, always the sensitive one, simply leaned against his mother's shoulder. The rest of the 5-hour flight to San Francisco proceeded without Heather Miller entering the first-class cabin again. Before landing, Jasmine used the airplane's Wi-Fi to file a detailed complaint with Continental Airways, attaching a segment of Isaiah's video as evidence. What would you do if you were in Jasmine's situation? Comment number 1 if you think she should pursue further action against the airline, or number 2 if you believe filing the complaint was sufficient. Have you ever experienced or witnessed discrimination while traveling? Like this video if you support Jasmine standing up for her family, and subscribe to follow what happens next in this incredible story. Now let's see how the aftermath of this incident unfolds and how this video changes everything for the Wright family. The Wright family's luxury SUV wound its way up the hills of San Francisco as the setting sun cast a golden glow across the bay. Under normal circumstances, the breathtaking view would have captivated the triplets, but today a heavy silence filled the vehicle. The hotel should be about 10 minutes away, Jasmine said, checking the navigation on her phone. She'd splurged on the Fairmont, hoping its panoramic views and 5-star amenities might salvage their vacation after the flight ordeal. Isaiah, did you really post that video? Elijah asked from the back seat, breaking the silence. Isaiah nodded. Right after we landed. People need to see this stuff still happens. Good, Zion stated firmly. She shouldn't get away with it. Jasmine glanced in the rearview mirror at her sons. The incident had affected each differently. Zion was angry, his usual confidence hardened into something sharper. Isaiah remained analytical, processing the experience through the lens of social justice. Elijah had withdrawn, his gentle spirit bruised by the public humiliation. After checking into their 2-bedroom suite, they ordered room service rather than venturing out to one of the restaurants Jasmine had carefully researched before their trip. No one felt like being in public. We should try to get some rest, Jasmine suggested as they finished their meal. Tomorrow we can start fresh with Fisherman's Wharf and Alcatraz like we planned. The boys nodded without enthusiasm. As they prepared for bed, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from Amara. Have you seen Isaiah's video? It's going viral. Call me. Frowning, Jasmine opened her social media app. Her stomach dropped. Isaiah's recording of the incident, just over 4 minutes long, had already garnered over 100,000 views and was climbing rapidly. The comments section was exploding with outrage, support, and inevitably, racist trolls defending Heather's actions. Isaiah, she called, moving to the boys' room. Your video has gone viral. The triplets gathered around her phone, watching the view counter tick upward in real time. Whoa, Zion breathed. It's being shared everywhere, Isaiah noted, opening his own phone to check the original post. Over 5,000 comments already. Jasmine felt a complex wave of emotions. On one hand, the video provided irrefutable evidence of what had happened to her sons. On the other, she worried about the attention this would bring to her family and potentially her company. You should probably know, Isaiah added hesitantly, I tagged Continental Airways and used hashtags like #FlyingWhileBlack and #FirstClassWhileBlack. Before Jasmine could respond, her phone rang with a call from Continental Airways Customer Relations Department. Ms. Wright, began a polished voice, this is Patricia Lawson, Senior Director of Customer Relations at Continental. We've become aware of a video posted online regarding an incident on today's flight from Atlanta to San Francisco. Yes, that would be the incident involving my children being forcibly relocated from their assigned first-class seats while I briefly stepped away, Jasmine replied coolly. On behalf of Continental Airways, I want to express our deepest apologies for your experience, Patricia continued. This falls far below our standards of service and our commitment to treating all passengers with dignity and respect. I appreciate that, Jasmine said. And what actions are being taken regarding Ms. Miller? A brief pause. I can confirm that Heather Miller has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. We take these matters extremely seriously. After a few more minutes of corporate apologies and promises of a thorough investigation, Patricia offered a settlement, full refund of their tickets, vouchers for future travel, and additional frequent flyer miles. "I'll need to consider your offer," Jasmine responded. "This isn't just about compensation. It's about accountability and ensuring this doesn't happen to other families." After ending the call, Jasmine found all three boys looking at her expectantly. "They've put her on leave," she informed them. "And offered a refund and vouchers." "That's it?" Zion asked incredulously. "For now," Jasmine replied. "The video is forcing them to respond faster than they normally would." By morning, the situation had escalated beyond anything they could have anticipated. Isaiah's video had surpassed 3 million views overnight. Major news outlets were running stories with headlines like, "Discrimination at 30,000 feet, Black teens forced to back of plane," and "First class while Black, CEO's sons targeted by flight attendant." Jasmine's phone wouldn't stop ringing, calls from journalists seeking comments, social media notifications exploding, texts from friends and colleagues who had recognized her family in the viral video. Continental Airways issued an official statement that morning. Continental Airways is aware of the video circulating on social media regarding an incident on Flight 1422 from Atlanta to San Francisco. "We are deeply disturbed by what the video appears to show and have placed the involved employee on administrative leave while we conduct a thorough investigation. Continental Airways has zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind, and we are committed to ensuring all passengers are treated with dignity and respect." The statement's careful wording, particularly what the video appears to show, infuriated social media users, who flooded Continental's accounts with demands for more decisive action. As the Wright family attempted to salvage their vacation with a visit to Alcatraz, they were recognized by other tourists who had seen the video. "Are you the family from the plane?" a woman asked as they waited in line for the ferry. "My daughter showed me that video. It was disgraceful how you were treated." Similar encounters occurred throughout the day, some supportive, others merely curious, a few clearly hostile. By afternoon, Jasmine made the difficult decision to cut their sightseeing short. Back at the hotel, the front desk manager approached them discreetly. "Ms. Wright, we've received some concerning phone calls asking about your family's stay with us. For security purposes, we've added additional staff to monitor the entrances and have flagged your room for privacy protection." Jasmine's heart sank. What should have been a relaxing family vacation had transformed into a stressful ordeal under the glare of unwanted publicity. In their suite, she convened a family meeting. "I think we need to discuss cutting this trip short and returning to Atlanta." "Because of the racists?" Zion challenged. "That's letting them win." "It's not about winning or losing," Jasmine explained gently. "It's about your safety and well-being." Isaiah, who had been scrolling through comments on his video, looked up. "Some of these threats are pretty specific, Mom. People are really angry, both supporting us and against us." Elijah, who had been quiet most of the day, finally spoke up. "I want to go home." Jasmine nodded, making the decision. "I'll change our flights for tomorrow." That evening, while the boys ordered another room service dinner, Jasmine took a video call from Amara and two Phoenix Digital board members who had called an emergency meeting. "The company is being dragged into this," explained Harold Fitzgerald, the most conservative member of her board. "Several news outlets have identified you as the CEO of Phoenix Digital. Our PR team is getting inquiries." "What Harold means," Amara interjected, shooting him a look, "is that we need to discuss how to support you through this while also managing any potential impact on the company." "My family was discriminated against," Jasmine stated firmly. "I won't apologize for standing up against that, and I won't pretend it didn't happen to make anyone comfortable." "No one's suggesting that," Amara assured her. "But we should coordinate our messaging. Actually, Phoenix has received thousands of supportive messages from people impressed by how you handled the situation." "The stock is up 3 points today," added Thomas Chen, another board member. The publicity isn't necessarily negative for us. After finalizing a strategy with her team, Jasmine rejoined her sons, finding them huddled around Isaiah's laptop. The airline CEO just released a video statement, Isaiah informed her, pressing play. On screen, Martin Blackwell, CEO of Continental Airways, appeared solemn. I've personally reviewed the video of the incident on Flight 1422 and spoken with our flight crew. What occurred was unacceptable and does not reflect our values at Continental Airways. We have terminated the employment of the flight attendant involved and are conducting additional training for all staff. I have reached out directly to the Wright family to offer my personal apology. They fired her, Zion stated, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Jasmine's phone rang moments later, a private number. It was indeed Martin Blackwell, offering profuse apologies and an improved settlement offer. While I appreciate your call, Mr. Blackwell, Jasmine responded, this incident speaks to a systemic issue, not just one employee. I'll have my attorney review your offer, but what I really want to know is how Continental plans to address the underlying problem. After ending the call, Jasmine looked at her sons. We're going home tomorrow. But this isn't over. None of them could have predicted just how true that statement would prove to be. The Wright family's return to Atlanta resembled nothing so much as a celebrity arrival. As they disembarked from their flight, first class on a different airline, several passengers surreptitiously took photos. At baggage claim, a small contingent of local news crews waited with cameras ready. Ms. Wright. Can we get a statement about the Continental Airways incident? Boys. How does it feel to have your experience go viral? Jasmine shielded her sons as best she could, issuing only a brief comment, we're still processing what happened and appreciate the support we've received. We ask for privacy as we return home. Amara had arranged for a private car service with tinted windows to whisk them from the airport directly to their Buckhead home, where they found 2 news vans already parked across the street. This is insane, Zion muttered as they hurried inside. Once safely in their home, Jasmine activated the security system and drew the blinds. The phone rang almost immediately, the head of their homeowners association. Jasmine, it's Margaret. We've had reports of unknown vehicles and individuals on the street. The association has authorized temporary security for the neighborhood until this dies down. Thank you, Margaret, Jasmine replied, genuinely grateful. Though the HOA had given her headaches when she first moved in as one of the few black homeowners in the exclusive community, moments like this reminded her why she'd chosen to raise her family here. Over the next few days, the Wright family adjusted to their new reality as reluctant public figures. Isaiah's video had now been viewed over 12 million times and had sparked intense debates about racial profiling in commercial aviation. News programs featured panels discussing flying while black, and several celebrities had shared the video with messages of support. Continental Airways was facing a PR crisis. Their stock had dropped 7%, and a hashtag campaign calling for a boycott was gaining traction. The company announced a comprehensive review of their diversity policies and promised mandatory anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff. Jasmine's inbox overflowed with meeting requests from her Phoenix digital executive team. Though she'd planned to take the week off, she found herself in back-to-back video conferences from her home office. The board is split, Amara reported during one such call. Some members think you should leverage this moment to position Phoenix as a leader in corporate diversity. Others worry about the company becoming too associated with a controversial issue. Since when is opposing racism controversial? Jasmine asked sharply. You know how corporate America works, Amara sighed. They love diversity in theory but get nervous when it might affect the bottom line. Meanwhile, the triplets were dealing with their own challenges. Their return to Westlake Academy the following Monday brought unwanted attention from classmates who had seen the video. Dude, you're famous, one student exclaimed to Isaiah in the hallway. Can I get your autograph before you go on Ellen? Another joked to Zion. Some teachers were supportive, pulling the boys aside to check on their well-being. Others seemed uncomfortable, overcompensating with excessive friendliness or avoiding eye contact altogether. During lunch, Elijah texted his brothers from the library, "Can't deal with the cafeteria today. Too many people staring." Zion wanted to confront every whisper and stare, while Isaiah approached the situation more pragmatically, using the opportunity to educate classmates about the realities of racial profiling. Elijah, always the most sensitive of the three, withdrew further, seeking solitude whenever possible. That evening, the family gathered in their living room to discuss how they were coping. "I scheduled appointments with Dr. Bennett for all three of you," Jasmine informed her sons, referring to the family therapist they had seen periodically over the years. "What happened was traumatic, and it's important to process it properly." "I'm not traumatized," Zion objected. "I'm angry." "Anger can be a response to trauma," Jasmine explained gently. "And keeping it bottled up isn't healthy." Isaiah nodded in agreement. "I've been reading about racial trauma. It's a real psychological phenomenon." "Whatever," Zion muttered, though his resistance lacked conviction. Elijah remained quiet, absently stroking their family cat who had settled in his lap. Jasmine's phone chimed with an email notification. "Continental's CEO wants to meet in person," she announced after reading it. "They're offering a significant settlement and want to discuss having us participate in their new diversity initiative." "Are we going to sue them?" Isaiah asked. "I've been speaking with our attorney," Jasmine confirmed. "But lawsuits take years, and the outcome is never guaranteed. A settlement might be the most practical solution. So she just gets fired and that's it?" Zion demanded, referring to Heather Miller. "She humiliated us in front of an entire plane and gets to walk away. The company fired her, which impacts her career significantly," Jasmine pointed out. "But our focus needs to be on healing and creating positive change, not retribution." The conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. On the security camera, they saw a delivery person with an enormous flower arrangement. After verifying it wasn't from an unknown sender, Jasmine accepted the delivery, a stunning display with a card from Martin Blackwell, Continental's CEO, reiterating his apology. "Flowers won't fix racism," Zion commented dryly. "No," Jasmine agreed, "but acknowledging wrongdoing is the first step toward change." Later that week, speaking invitations began arriving. The NAACP wanted the family to appear at their annual convention. A prestigious university asked Jasmine to deliver a lecture on corporate diversity. A popular podcast requested an interview with the Triplets to discuss their experience. "We need to be strategic about which platforms we engage with," Jasmine told her sons. "Our goal isn't fame or publicity. It's promoting understanding and accountability." "What about school?" Elijah asked quietly. "Everyone keeps asking questions. I just want things to go back to normal." Jasmine's heart ached for her youngest son. While Zion channeled his feelings into righteous anger and Isaiah approached the situation intellectually, Elijah simply wanted to escape the spotlight. "I know, baby," she said, pulling him into a hug. "This will settle down eventually. For now, we take it one day at a time." 2 weeks after the incident, just as media interest was beginning to wane, Amara called with unexpected news. "You're not going to believe this," she began without preamble. "Heather Miller has applied for a customer relations position at Phoenix Digital." "What?" Jasmine felt as though the air had been sucked from her lungs. "HR flagged it immediately," Amara continued. "She didn't disclose being terminated from Continental, just listed her end date. The background check revealed everything." Jasmine struggled to process this information. "Does she know Phoenix Digital is my company?" "Apparently not. The application was submitted to our general careers portal. Her resume doesn't mention anything about the incident, and she probably doesn't know your full name. You were just MS, right?" to her on the plane. "What are the odds?" Jasmine murmured, still stunned by the coincidence. "One more thing," Amara added. "The legal team says we need to be careful how we handle this. Rejecting her application specifically because of the incident could potentially open us up to a wrongful rejection lawsuit, especially since she was never criminally charged with anything. So what are you suggesting? That we hire the woman who racially profiled my children? Jasmine asked incredulously. Of course not, Amara assured her. But we need to document thoroughly that she's being rejected for legitimate reasons, like falsifying her employment history by not disclosing a termination. After ending the call, Jasmine sat in her home office, contemplating this surreal development. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of irony. She called the boys in to share the news. She applied to your company? Zion's eyes widened with disbelief. That's statistically improbable, Isaiah remarked, always the analytical one. What are you going to do? Elijah asked. Jasmine considered the question carefully. I'm not sure yet. But whatever happens, we're going to handle it the right way. As CEO, she could simply direct HR to reject the application. But something about that felt unsatisfying, too easy, too clean. This woman had humiliated her children, had tried to make them feel less than, had exercised her power in a way that reinforced the very prejudices Jasmine had worked her entire life to overcome. Perhaps there was a more fitting response, one that would bring true accountability while maintaining her own integrity. The beginning of a plan formed in Jasmine's mind as she looked at her 3 sons, the most precious people in her world. Actually, she said slowly, I think I might interview her myself. Are you absolutely certain about this? Amara asked, leaning against the doorframe of Jasmine's office at Phoenix Digital headquarters. It was the first time Jasmine had come into the office since returning from San Francisco. Jasmine looked up from the resume on her desk, Heather Miller's application for the Senior Customer Relations Specialist position. Yes. I need to look her in the eyes. The legal team is nervous, Amara warned. They've drafted a script for the interview that carefully avoids any mention of the incident. They're worried about entrapment claims. I'm not going to entrap her, Jasmine replied. But I'm also not going to pretend I don't know who she is. Marcus Chen, Phoenix Digital's HR director, knocked on the open door. The background check results are complete, he said, handing Jasmine a folder. It's interesting. Jasmine flipped through the report, her eyebrows rising. She's had 4 customer service jobs in the past 5 years. And left each one under questionable circumstances, Marcus noted. No criminal record, but there's a pattern of customer complaints, particularly from minority customers. Nothing that resulted in termination until Continental, though. So she's been doing this for years, Jasmine murmured. Just flying under the radar. The airline provided a statement confirming her termination was due to violation of company policy regarding equal treatment of passengers, Marcus continued. They were careful with the wording due to their own liability concerns. Jasmine closed the folder. Schedule the interview for tomorrow afternoon. I want to be part of the final panel. Are you sure that's wise? Amara questioned. What if she recognizes you? That's exactly what I'm counting on, Jasmine replied. That evening, Jasmine shared her plan with the triplets over dinner. You're going to interview her yourself? Zion asked, a mix of surprise and admiration in his voice. That's gangster, Mom. It's not about revenge, Jasmine clarified. It's about accountability. This woman has apparently been discriminating against people who look like us for years. The incident on the plane wasn't an isolated event, it was just the first time she was caught on video. What exactly do you hope to accomplish? Isaiah asked, always the pragmatic one. Jasmine considered the question. I want to understand if she recognizes what she did wrong. And I want her to understand the impact of her actions. What if she sues you? Elijah asked quietly. For setting her up or something? I'm not setting anyone up, Jasmine explained. I'm the CEO of the company she applied to. I occasionally participate in final interviews for customer-facing positions. There's nothing improper about that. You should record it, Zion suggested. Like Isaiah did on the plane. Georgia is a one-party consent state for recording, Isaiah added helpfully. Legally, you could. We record all interviews as standard procedure, Jasmine assured them. Everything will be above board. Later that night, as Jasmine prepared for bed, she received texts from each of her sons, revealing their distinct perspectives on the situation. From Zion, make her squirm, Mom. Love you. From Isaiah, approaching this systematically is the right move. Document everything. From Elijah, simply, be careful. I love you. The next morning, Jasmine dressed with particular care, a tailored black pantsuit, pearl earrings, and her natural hair styled in a sophisticated updo. Her appearance was both polished and unmistakably that of a black woman in power, exactly the image she wanted to project. At Phoenix Digital, the interview process for Heather Miller began without Jasmine's presence. First, a technical screening with the department manager, followed by a panel interview with team members. By all accounts, Heather performed well, displaying the customer service expertise one would expect from someone with her experience. She's qualified on paper, Marcus reported during a brief meeting before the final interview. Excellent communication skills, knows how to handle difficult customers, familiar with CRM systems. Any red flags? Jasmine asked. Nothing obvious, he replied. Though she did seem uncomfortable when Jamal from our technical team joined the panel. Her body language changed subtly. Jamal Washington was one of Phoenix Digital's most brilliant developers, and one of the few black men in the engineering department. Noted, Jasmine said. Let's proceed with the final interview. In the executive conference room, Jasmine sat with Amara and Marcus, reviewing their questions one last time. A small camera on the table would record the session, standard procedure for all final interviews. At precisely 3 p.m., Marcus's assistant led Heather Miller into the room. She wore a conservative navy dress, her blonde hair pulled back in the same tight ponytail she'd worn on the plane. She smiled confidently as she entered, but the smile froze on her face when she saw Jasmine. Though recognition flickered in her eyes, she quickly composed herself. Good afternoon, she said, extending her hand to each interviewer in turn. Ms. Miller, thank you for coming in today, Jasmine began professionally. I'm Jasmine Wright, CEO of Phoenix Digital. These are my colleagues, Amara Thompson, our COO, and Marcus Chin, our HR director. It's a pleasure to meet you all, Heather replied, her voice steady though her knuckles were white as she gripped her portfolio. The interview began conventionally enough, with questions about Heather's experience and approach to customer relations. She answered competently, if somewhat stiffly, occasionally glancing at Jasmine with uncertainty. Ms. Miller, Jasmine finally said, I noticed there's a gap in your employment history. Your application states you left Continental Airways 2 weeks ago, but doesn't mention the circumstances. Could you elaborate? Heather swallowed visibly. There was a misunderstanding with a passenger that was blown out of proportion. The company and I decided to part ways. A misunderstanding, Jasmine repeated. Could you be more specific? I'd rather not get into details, Heather replied. It was an unfortunate situation that doesn't reflect my customer service abilities. Jasmine leaned forward slightly. At Phoenix Digital, we pride ourselves on transparency and accountability. When mistakes happen, and they do happen, we expect our team members to acknowledge them and learn from them. Heather shifted uncomfortably. Of course. I believe in accountability as well. Do you? Jasmine asked. Because our background check reveals that you were terminated for violating Continental's non-discrimination policy. And rather than acknowledging that, you've characterized it as a misunderstanding. The color drained from Heather's face. I didn't realize your company would have access to that information. We conduct thorough background checks for all positions, Marcus explained. Especially those involving customer interaction. Heather's composure began to crack. If you knew about this, why even bring me in for an interview? Is this some kind of setup? No one is setting you up, Ms. Miller, Jasmine replied calmly. You applied to this company of your own volition. But since we're here, I'd like to understand, do you recognize me? The tension in the room was palpable as Heather looked directly at Jasmine, then quickly away. You look familiar. 2 weeks ago, you removed my 3 teenage sons from their assigned first-class seats on Continental Flight 1422 while I stepped away to take a phone call. You placed them in separate rows at the back of the plane and gave their seats to white passengers. When confronted, you claimed there was a computer error. Heather's expression hardened. So that's what this is about. Revenge. This isn't about revenge, Ms. Miller. It's about understanding whether you recognize the harm your actions caused and whether you've learned from the experience. Those boys were unaccompanied minors in first class, Heather suddenly blurted out. It was unusual and suspicious. They were 14 years old, had valid tickets, and were seated together for less than 5 minutes before I stepped away, Jasmine countered. And they weren't unaccompanied minors by airline policy, which defines that as children under 12 traveling alone. People like you always make everything about race, Heather snapped, her professional veneer crumbling. I was doing my job. People like me? Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Realizing her mistake, Heather backtracked. I meant, people who jump to conclusions. MS. Miller, Amara interjected, as a company that values diversity and inclusion, we're concerned by your characterization of the incident. Do you believe you did anything wrong in that situation? Heather's jaw tightened. I believe I was unfairly scapegoated by an airline trying to avoid bad publicity. I've been in customer service for 15 years. I know how to do my job. Yet our background check shows a pattern of complaints from minority customers at your previous positions, Marcus noted. Does that concern you at all? Those complaints were baseless, Heather insisted. Some people are just looking for special treatment. Jasmine sat back, observing Heather's defensive posture and increasingly agitated responses. She had her answer. Heather Miller had learned nothing from the incident. Ms. Miller, Jasmine said finally, at Phoenix Digital, we believe that acknowledging mistakes is the first step toward growth. We've all made errors in judgment. What matters is how we respond to them. Are you lecturing me? Heather demanded, her voice rising. You used your position and privilege to get me fired, and now you're sitting there in judgment. My privilege? Jasmine repeated quietly. Yes. Do you know how hard it is to find a job now? My reputation is ruined because you couldn't handle a simple misunderstanding without turning it into a racial incident. The mask had fallen completely now. Heather's face was flushed with anger, her words tumbling out unfiltered. Those boys didn't belong in first class, she continued, seemingly unable to stop herself. Everyone was thinking it. I was just the only one with the guts to do something about it. A heavy silence fell over the room. Marcus reached forward and tapped the camera, ensuring it was still recording. Thank you for your candor, Ms. Miller, Jasmine said evenly. I think we have all the information we need to make our decision. Heather's eyes widened as she realized what she'd said. You recorded that. You tricked me into saying those things. We record all final interviews as standard procedure, Marcus explained, pointing to the disclosure form Heather had signed upon arrival. You were informed of this when you arrived. This interview is over, Heather declared, standing abruptly. And you'll be hearing from my lawyer. This was a setup from the beginning. As she stormed toward the door, Jasmine called after her. Ms. Miller, for what it's worth, I wasn't trying to trick you. I was hoping you'd take responsibility for your actions so we could all move forward. I'm sorry that didn't happen. Heather paused at the door, her back to the room. For a moment, it seemed she might turn around, might offer some acknowledgement or apology. Instead, she yanked the door open and disappeared down the hallway. In the silence that followed, Amara let out a low whistle. Well, that was something. Are we in legal trouble? Marcus asked, looking concerned. No, Jasmine replied confidently. Everything was by the book. She applied to us, we conducted a standard interview with standard questions. That she revealed her prejudices in the process is on her, not us. As they gathered their materials, Jasmine felt no satisfaction, only a weary certainty that she'd done what was necessary. This hadn't been about punishment or revenge. It had been about truth, and Heather Miller had finally revealed hers. 2 days after Heather Miller's disastrous interview at Phoenix Digital, Jasmine was in the middle of a budget meeting when her assistant quietly slipped her a note, urgent call from legal. Excusing herself, Jasmine stepped into her private office and picked up the phone. This is Jasmine. Ms. Wright, this is Eleanor Patel from legal, came the crisp voice of Phoenix Digital's chief counsel. We've just been served with a lawsuit from Heather Miller, alleging discriminatory hiring practices, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and entrapment. Jasmine sank into her chair. That was fast. She's working with a lawyer known for taking high-profile discrimination cases, Eleanor continued. They're claiming you orchestrated a revenge interview specifically to humiliate her and record her under duress. That's absurd, Jasmine replied. She applied to Phoenix Digital of her own volition. We followed standard interview procedures. I know that, and you know that, Eleanor assured her. But they're spinning a narrative for the media. They've already issued a press release framing Miller as the victim of corporate bullying. Forward me everything, Jasmine instructed. And set up a meeting with the full legal team for this afternoon. After ending the call, Jasmine took a moment to collect herself. She'd anticipated the possibility of legal action, but the speed and aggression of Heather's response was surprising. This woman was not backing down. By late afternoon, Phoenix Digital's executive conference room had been transformed into a war room. Eleanor Patel stood at the head of the table, surrounded by 3 associate counsels and Amara. The good news, Eleanor began, is that our position is legally sound. Georgia is a one-party consent state for recordings. Ms. Miller signed a disclosure acknowledging the interview would be recorded. Nothing in our questions constituted entrapment or discrimination. And the bad news? Jasmine asked. The court of public opinion doesn't always follow legal principles, Eleanor replied frankly. Miller's attorney is painting this as a powerful CEO using her position to exact personal revenge. Some media outlets are already running with that angle. Amara slid a tablet across the table showing several headlines. Flight attendant sues tech CEO, claims setup interview after viral plane incident. Tables turned, fired flight attendant claims discrimination by black CEO. Continental Airways incident takes new twist as flight attendant fights back. She's playing the victim, Jasmine observed, scrolling through the articles. Effectively, Eleanor nodded. They're claiming you deliberately hid your identity until the final interview to ambush her, knowing she wouldn't recognize your name from the plane incident. That's ridiculous, Amara interjected. Jasmine participates in final interviews regularly. And Miller should have disclosed her termination from Continental in the first place. Our recommendation is to file an immediate motion to dismiss, Eleanor continued. The legal claims are weak. But we should also prepare for the PR dimension. Jasmine's phone buzzed with an incoming call from home, the special ringtone she'd assigned for emergency calls from her sons. Excuse me, I need to take this. Stepping into the hallway, she answered immediately. What's wrong? Mom, Zion's voice was tight with anger. Some reporter just showed up at the house asking for our comment on the racism lawsuit against you. Elijah answered the door before we could stop him. Jasmine's blood ran cold. Where is Elijah now? In his room. He's pretty shaken up. The reporter tried to ask him questions about what really happened on the plane, implying we lied about it. I'm coming home right now, Jasmine declared. Don't answer the door again, and don't speak to anyone. Returning to the conference room, Jasmine quickly explained the situation. "They're going after your children." Eleanor looked appalled. "That crosses a line. We need to get ahead of this," Amara insisted. "A statement from Phoenix Digital supporting you unequivocally, and perhaps a restraining order keeping reporters away from your home and the boys' school." "I'll handle the legal angles," Eleanor promised. "But Jasmine, you need to decide how you want to respond personally. Silence could be interpreted as guilt." At home, Jasmine found a small cluster of news vans parked down the street from her house. Inside, the triplets were huddled in the living room, the blinds drawn. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Elijah said immediately, his eyes red-rimmed. "I thought it was a package delivery." Jasmine pulled him into a hug. "This is not your fault, baby. Not at all. They're saying you set her up," Isaiah reported, his laptop open to various news sites. "That you're the real racist. And people are believing it," Zion added bitterly. "The comments are full of trolls saying we lied about what happened on the plane." Jasmine gathered her sons close. "Listen to me. We know the truth. The video shows the truth. This is just a desperate attempt to shift blame." That evening, as the boys retreated to their rooms, Jasmine sat alone in her home office, watching news coverage of the lawsuit. Heather Miller had given an exclusive interview to a conservative news channel, tears streaming down her face as she described being ambushed by Jasmine. "I had no idea who she was when I walked into that interview," Heather claimed, dabbing at her eyes. "She set me up to destroy me a second time. First my airline career, now my reputation. All because of a misunderstanding that was blown out of proportion." The interviewer nodded sympathetically. "So you believe this is a case of reverse discrimination?" "I believe some people use accusations of racism to get special treatment," Heather replied, her victim act momentarily slipping. "And when you dare to stand up to them, they destroy you." Jasmine muted the television, a cold resolve settling over her. This woman was not only unapologetic for her actions but was now actively trying to rewrite history and drag Jasmine's family through the mud in the process. Her phone rang, Amara again. "Have you seen the interview?" her friend asked without preamble. "I'm watching it now," Jasmine confirmed. "She's good," Amara admitted reluctantly. The tears, the trembling voice. "She knows exactly what she's doing. She's had practice," Jasmine replied. 15 years of customer service experience, remember? She knows how to manipulate perceptions. "Eleanor has a plan," Amara continued. "But she needs your approval. It's aggressive." "Tell me." "We released the full interview recording. Not just clips, but the entire unedited session. Let people see for themselves exactly what was said and how it was said." Jasmine considered this. "Won't that just fuel the fire?" "Maybe initially," Amara acknowledged. "But the recording clearly shows Heather admitting her bias. Her exact words were, 'Those boys didn't belong in first class.' It's damning, Jasmine. No amount of tearful interviews can undo that." After a moment's reflection, Jasmine made her decision. "Do it. But I want to make a statement first, a real one, not a corporate press release. Something honest about why this matters so much." The next morning, Phoenix Digital issued a brief statement announcing they would be releasing the full interview recording that afternoon. Within hours, Heather's attorney filed an emergency injunction to prevent the release, claiming it would prejudice potential jurors. The judge, however, ruled against them, stating, "The plaintiff has already discussed the interview publicly in detail. The defendant has the right to present the actual recording in response." At 3 p.m., exactly 1 week after Heather Miller had walked into Phoenix Digital for her interview, the unedited video was uploaded to the company's official channels with a simple introduction from Jasmine. "In response to recent allegations, we are releasing the complete, unedited recording of an interview conducted at Phoenix Digital on May 15. We believe in transparency and accountability, and we trust the public to draw their own conclusions from the actual evidence rather than selective narratives. I stand by my actions both as a mother protecting her children from discrimination and as a CEO upholding my company's values of fairness and respect for all. The response was immediate and overwhelming. As the video circulated, public opinion began to shift dramatically. Heather's words, "Those boys didn't belong in first class." Everyone was thinking it. I was just the only one with the guts to do something about it. Were especially damning when heard in her own voice, with her own emphasis and emotion. Social media erupted with support for Jasmine and condemnation of Heather's attempt to portray herself as the victim. Major news outlets that had initially presented a "both sides" narrative now focused on Heather's admitted bias and her lawsuit's apparent attempt to reframe the narrative. By evening, Heather's attorney issued a terse statement: "We are reviewing our options in light of new information and will have no further comment at this time." The following morning, Jasmine received a call from Eleanor. "They've withdrawn the lawsuit," the attorney announced without preamble. "Completely dropped all claims." "Just like that?" Jasmine asked, surprised. "The video was devastating to their case," Eleanor explained. Her own words contradicted everything she claimed in her lawsuit and media appearances. They had no choice but to retreat. For the first time in weeks, Jasmine felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. The truth had prevailed, messy and complicated as it was. That afternoon, she gathered her sons in the living room to share the news. "So it's over?" Elijah asked hopefully. "The lawsuit is over," Jasmine confirmed. "The conversation about racism in our society continues." "She never even apologized," Zion noted, still angry. "Not to us, not to anyone." "Some people never will," Jasmine replied gently. "That's why it's so important to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult." Isaiah, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. "I've been thinking about all of this, how one incident on a plane turned into this huge thing. It matters because it happens every day to people who don't have the power or platform we do." Jasmine felt a surge of pride. Through all the chaos and stress, her sons had gained something valuable, a deeper understanding of justice and responsibility. "You're right," she told Isaiah. "And that's why we didn't stay silent." As the family embraced in a group hug, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a news alert. Continental Airways had just announced a comprehensive new anti-bias training program for all employees, developed in consultation with civil rights organizations. Perhaps some good would come from this after all.